Good afternoon. Welcome to That's Entertainment with Brenton and Sheryl. And our guest, we've got a guest, fantastic guest, friend of mine, Tim Ferguson. Tim, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Brenton. Hi, Sheryl.
For those of you who don't know who Tim Ferguson is, shame on you for a start. But now, Tim, you've been in the entertainment industry for, God, when did you start? It was before Doug Anthony Allstars, yeah?
1892 was when it first began. I saw a comedian called Mo at the Alfalfa Theatre in Melbourne, and I thought that could be for me.
Yeah.
But, started our own theatre company, in fact, just because we couldn't get jobs with other theatre companies. So we started our own in like 1982, I think.
Yeah.
And, so we're very enterprising young insects.
Yeah. As a lot of us entertainers are. But you...
And a lot aren't, actually. I work with a lot of new comedians, and they've got two qualities that are really holding them back. And one is that they're lazy, and the other is that they're stupid. And those two qualities can really inhibit your professional career. I try to explain it to them, but they're a bit too lazy and stupid to hear me.
Now, let's start with a little bit about your career. So, Doug Anthony Allstars. So, you actually started that over in England, is that right?
We were buskers in Australia, mainly in Canberra and Sydney and Melbourne. And pretty soon we thought, let's go over to Edinburgh. So I went to the Edinburgh Festival, and everything happened from there. They put us on telly, and, away it went. It was, and I teach comedy now, so I encourage certainly, new comedians to busk on the street, because it's a non-paying audience, which means you don't get heckled, because you're doing it for free. And if you do get heckled, really, they are crossing a couple of social boundaries, and you get paid. But again, I refer to my lazy/stupid comment before. Most younger comics are too lazy and stupid, and probably a bit too proud to get out and do it on the streets. Busking, that is.
Yeah. Now, Doug Anthony Allstars, so the name Doug Anthony was a politician, I understand.
Yes, apparently there was a politician by that same name. We've always remained vague about the origins of where we got the name, but certainly there was a politician at the time who had a comb-over haircut and was apparently, people would say that's where you get the name from. But it could have been any of the other Doug Anthonys. Look in the phone book, if you can find one from that time, and you'll see there were a lot of D. Anthonys. Yeah.
Yeah. And now you were with, you had, what was his name? Was it Fiddler? Fiddler? F-I-D-L-E.
Well, yeah, it's Fiddler, because if you say Richard Fiddler and you think about it, it's kind of uncomfortable.
Oops. Yeah, didn't think of that. But
we thought we'd help one of the little people, as they liked to be called at the time. I'm sure they have other titles for themselves. Paul McDermott was also invited into the group, because I think little people, it's not a disability if you let it become one.
Oh, that's right. But Paul McDermott joined later. He joined after who was it?
Robert Piper, who
Robert
worked
Piper
for, who worked at the UN as the number one guy for a guy you may have heard of, William Jefferson Clinton.
Oh, wow.
He was his representative at the UN. Well, it sounds, wow. And, but then once you spend a few days with Bill, you start to realize he's just he's just a guy who likes his grits.
Now, I want to talk about your books. as well. I really want you to promote these today as well, if you want to, because I know you've written a series of books. You even put me onto some books when I messaged you once and I said, Tim, I want to write comedy into movies. Can you put me in the right direction? Because comedy is something I was never good at writing. I was always off the cuff comedy, but I could never write it. And you put me onto your Cheeky Monkey books or something.
Yeah. There's a book if you're interested in writing sitcoms and funny films, or even sketches. The Cheeky Monkey is for people who want to write narrative comedy, as it's called, which is comedy with stories. So it helps you build characters. It helps make your stories funnier from the get-go. It's all based on what Aristotle said, nearly 3,000 years ago about comedy. And the rules haven't really changed. Everybody thinks they're inventing them until a nerd like me comes and goes, yeah, look, Aristophanes said that in his book, his play, The Wasps. So it's, and a lot of people, Brenton will say, oh my God, comedy, it's a natural thing. It happens naturally. And of course it does, if you've got 50 years to finally work out how it works. Or you can, read a book like The Cheeky Monkey. It'll tell you. I'm writing a book on stand-up comedy. So just to save time for people who are interested in getting into stand-up, because lots of people are, but most people are, wandering onto the stage blind and following instinct, which, will get you there, but it takes a long, long time. Or you can actually work out, how to write a joke. And it doesn't make it easy, but it is a simple process. And like proposing marriage, simplicity is never a walk in the park, but at least you're a step ahead.
Now, there was one book that I have recently read about. I haven't read it yet, but it was one book that has grabbed my attention, and I really want to get a copy of this and read it. And it's simply called Book. Tell me about Book.
Yes, Book was Doug Anthony Allstars, our first book, which is it's just sort of a jumbled ragtag collection of vaguely interrelated stories full of conspiracy theories before conspiracy theories were daggy. Back when conspiracy theories actually were cool because they were very dangerous. But now everybody's got one. Book, Das Book was made by Allen and Unwin and sold everywhere apart from Germany and Japan, where it was banned.
I think it sold a hell of a lot of copies, and it was very popular. And
there's nothing like being banned. If something gets banned, everybody wants it.
Exactly.
You ban a movie, and everybody queues up going, I don't know, I hear it's French. Why else would you go see a French movie? I always wait until, if the movie's good enough, they make it in English.
Exactly. It was like, because I used to live in Melbourne. You're in Melbourne or Sydney?
I'm in Sydney right now, but was in Melbourne for a long time.
Yeah.
A long time.
Well, I lived in Melbourne until 5 years ago, and I know when the Underbelly series came out, I was like, I want to see this. They showed a couple of episodes on TV, and then they stopped it because all the court cases were still going and everything. And as far as I know, it's still banned over there. But everyone in Melbourne wanted it, so that because they couldn't get it there, they just wanted it. And it was easy enough to get because you just have to write to JB Hi-Fi in Perth or Sydney or somewhere else, and they'd send it over. But anyway, but no, you're right. As soon as it's banned, you want it. But I want to talk about. I am going to talk about your involvement with MS and your experience with MS.
Oh, great! Because it's funny. So let's get on to that.
Well,
soon.
it's not funny, but what really impresses me is the fact that you have continued. You've not let it stop you, and that's.
Oh yeah, but MS is funny. If you've got it, what are your choices? You can sit in the corner and cry all day saying, I wanted to be a professional basketball player. Or you can get on with life and get a sense of humor about it. And most people with MS, ignore it. They usually don't even mention it.
Yeah.
Because whatever it's doing to them is really quite obvious. So it is kind of funny. I do a show, about MS, and it's a funny show, because, what else are you going to do? Sit around and moan and make a dramatic Australian drama film? Oh, God, that's all we need. We need Nitram, except about MS, please.
But you initially, I think, from what I've read of your early days with MS, you didn't want anyone except for your immediate family basically to know about it. You kept it from everyone, and you were even doing Doug Anthony Allstars, I think, while you were in the early stages of it.
Well, it was only after the Allstars when the symptoms had kind of come back, and they were very scary. It's called remitting or relapsing remitting, which means it comes and it goes, like the fashions in Fremantle. They briefly turn up and then they go again. And so it would come and go, but I didn't know what it was. And being a young man, I assumed it was just I was drinking too much and partying too much. It was only in, a couple of years after the All-Stars that it happened again, and I went and got an MRI. And only then did someone say, oh, my God, you got this thing. And then because the symptoms came and went, and they would be things like, your eyes would go a bit crossed, or your hand would be a bit numb, or you'd walk with a bit of a limp. I think there's no point in freaking everybody out. I'm on commercial television, and there's nothing so shit scared as a television executive. So I just kept it to myself.
Yeah.
But then eventually, when I started needing a walking stick, I got sick of people asking me why. What's wrong with your leg, mate? So I just thought, all right, I'll tell them. And there's nothing like telling people you've got MS to make them want to change topics. It's like holding a cat over a bucket of water. They will say anything just to get out of this discussion. I would give them long, entailed descriptions of the symptoms and how it affects everybody. And women are usually the ones who are affected, and these are the age groups. And once you've pinned people to a wall and spoken to them for 10 minutes about MS, they never want to raise the topic again. It's funny to watch their little faces. Their blink rate, Brenton, their blink rate goes through the roof.
Yeah. But because our radio station, IPL Radio, we talk about a lot of abilities and various abilities. Let's put it that way.
Oh,
because
that's a bit adult.
Yeah.
Do you include disabilities in that?
Well, because a disability is, hey, I can't do something, but you.
Well, see, now that's an interesting thing, is that people assume. In fact, I'll tell you the good news. The good news is that there is a social tidal wave coming, and it's going to wash itself, crash into Australia and America. It's going to go over Europe. It's going to happen all around the world, all through Asia, through China. And what it is the realization by idiot employers, greedy employers, that they can do a lot worse than hire people with disabilities.
Definitely.
Because there is always that assumption, I got to hire someone who's, say, blind, and they can get into the office with their dog and speak on the phones, and they can use Braille to type to people. But, what could possibly go wrong? And at the same time, they'll be sitting next to an office full of young workers who are all shagging, screaming, partying, turning up with grinding jaws on Monday morning, with presenting far bigger problems of laziness and stupidity than somebody who with a disability like blindness will commit to a job they get.
Yeah.
So a person with disabilities is actually a better bet for an employer, and the ones who work it out are always the first ones to talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's, but of course we think, oh no, they're not able. So it's like a blind person is only able, the one thing they can't do is see. And yeah, that's a big thing, but they can talk, they can type, they can argue, they can have ideas, they can problem solve, they can do anything someone else does. They'll just do it with more enthusiasm. Same thing like with a person who's completely deaf. If you are running a company like Telstra, you just hire a bunch of deaf people to answer the phones in your complaints department. They just have to just occasionally go, oh, yes, oh, that's terrible.
Yeah.
So it's the next wave. And if I can have a little rant, can I have a little rant, Brenton?
Of course you can. Please go with it.
And was that your co-host? I heard a giggle. I heard a woman go.
Yes,
ah.
yes. That's Cheryl. Say hello,
Yeah,
Cheryl.
Hi, Cheryl. Hi, Cheryl. Stand by. I'm going to do a rant, and then I want to talk to you. The rant is very simple to anybody, and of course, with a station like yours, there'll be lots of people, all kinds of people, from all of the sexual spectrums. L, which now comes first, I'm not quite sure, because it used to be G. I think there's a fight going on. L, G, B, which is bi, T for trans, Q, which is queer, which I think is everybody, especially the middle-aged white heteros. Don't tell me they're not queer. And if they aren't queer, what are they doing with that ping pong paddle in the bedroom? But don't get me started. LGBTQI, which of course is for intersex. These are people who are born, who have a congenital condition of one kind or another, so they can be everything up to and including, hermaphrodite. And of course, there's A, which are the abstinent people or the basically the anti-sex people who don't want to have sex. They're not really interested, or they can take care of themselves using their own ping pong paddle. And all of these are great, and I've slept with all of them. Some of them better than others, but that's just the way the world works. I've slept with all of them, and it's great. And I heartily encourage them to march and to fight for all their rights because, right-wing people are conservative and stupid, so it's worth fighting. But not only that, we have the wokeness, which of course is about racial identity, ethnic identity, and identities across the board. Now, I say a very simple thing. I just point out the fact that 20% of Australians, and therefore you imagine 20% of the world population, 20% of Australians are eligible for consideration by the National Disability Insurance Scheme. What that means is that 20% of Australians have either a physical disability, an acquired disability, a mental illness, an intellectual illness or disability. And I'm probably missing one, and I apologize to those people who no doubt will send a very angry tweet. But 20% means that people with disabilities outnumber all of the LGBTQIAs put together. They outnumber any single ethnic or racial group in Australia. And yet, people with disabilities and their employment is not up for discussion. Where are the people on Triple J? That's right, Triple J, the ABC radio, talking about giving jobs to young people with disabilities. They don't know that more than 50% of people with any one of those kinds of disabilities are chronically unemployed from birth until death.
Mm.
And if that's not a crisis, then I defy an asexual, abstinent person, lesbian person, gay person, bi, trans, or whatever they like to do in the bedroom, or whatever they identify themselves as, to come up with something better to march about. And that's the end of my rant. What do you think, Cheryl?
I think you've got it right. I mean, there is more people with, disability is a wrong word, because as you said, they're able to do stuff, so that people should be able to pick that up and figure out what they can do and use what they can do,
Yes, it should be called disendadability.
Yeah.
Or something, because most of the time, like me, like I'm in a wheelchair, my left arm is useless, largely useless. I'm in a wheelchair because my legs most of the time don't talk to me, but everything else works. But that means I can do what I did, which I've directed movies, written TV, I teach around the world. Sometimes physically when the world is open. And within 5 minutes, people forget about the wheelchair because I'm already doing whatever I'm supposed to do. And we just have to remember as a society that having a disability is not the end of anything. I mean, look at the Australian of the Year, Dylan Alcott. Can you imagine playing tennis against that man? Let alone in a wheelchair, playing wheelchair tennis. I mean, when I first heard that, I thought it was a joke. And then it's like, oh, Jesus, he actually does that. Now, if he can do that, if the Paralympics can go ahead every 4 years, surely people like him, or people suffering, things like depression, there's a lot of them out there,
yep.
Surely they can still be invited to contribute just like anyone else. And just like anyone else, they'll have days where they say, I'm sorry, I can't come in today. And again, I refer you to young people who've had too much ice last night and probably shouldn't be allowed near the phone.
Hang on, I'll get back to you.
It's exciting, isn't it, Cheryl?
All right, so Cheryl's handed me the headphones back because we've only got one headphone plugged in. I don't know where the other headphones are.
That's what I like about this radio station. You cut it back to the bone and then you can really taste what's going on.
Now, for those of our listeners who don't fully understand what MS actually does, can you explain what happens? Can you explain the condition?
Well, here's a funny thing, Cheryl and Brenton and dear listener, is that if you ask a neurologist, or as I did when the neurologist said, well, you got multiple sclerosis. And I said, how did that happen? He said, well, we don't know. All right. And is there a cure? No. All right. And so what are the symptoms? Well, it's a very, 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 very long list, because what happens with MS is, at least they know that your autoimmune system, which takes care of, flus and COVID and, whatever virus is in your system, the autoimmune system is so active and slightly panicked. It's a bit like, I don't know, a Port Adelaide football fan. They're a bit panicked and they will lash out at anything, including roadsides, anything they don't understand. And one of the things they don't understand is They don't understand viruses, so they eat that. But they also discover this stuff called myelin, which is like the rubber tubing around every nerve in your central nervous system, your brain, your neck, and your spine. And so they attack that. And so it's a bit like if you did that to an electric cord, sometimes the electricity doesn't end up going where it's supposed to. So things go on the fritz. But the trouble is, when it comes to predicting what it will do, is that anything that your body does, or indeed your brain does, can be affected by MS. So people get MS and they call it brain fog, but it's like, it's like saying they're from Derby, It's like, oh, you're from Derby, are you? How you going, Neville? Oh, pretty good. Or even worse, parts of Broome where the hippies are. So when they say, what are the symptoms? Like it is a long list, because it can involve all sorts of stuff, including turning you into a hippie from Broome. And if you're a hippie from Broome, what am I kidding myself? They're not listening. I might learn something.
But now you're a big advocate for MS. You do a lot for the MS Society, correct?
No, not really. In fact, I've got no interest in people with MS. I know it sounds terrible, but that's only if you've got MS. I've got a lot more interest in the broader community of people with mental, physical, or acquired disabilities, or, congenital, born with disabilities. I figure if I did become a champion for MS, that would be a little bit self-serving. I think it's much more, what's the word they use on Triple J? Oh, you're worthy. It's much more worthy to go out of your way to take care of people with really no hope of any of the help you're giving being returned in kind. So, people with MS should go and try to help people without MS, because there's plenty of people helping people with MS. It's why you're on the radio, because you guys could sit at home and go, yes, and I just read this book, and you could talk to people on the phone, but you do it to help other people that you've never met.
Yeah.
With new information, and how about this band, and how about this book, how about this new idea? And it's much the same. So no, I got no interest in the MS people. Okay. And also they just make me feel a bit uncomfortable.
Okay. Now you mentioned before that you teach. You've taught comedy screenwriting at New York University, which I think is in Sydney. Is that right?
Yeah, they have the Tisch initiative, where they send American students can elect and say, I'd like to go to Sydney and, study. Okay. So they're all American students. Teaching young Americans is pretty well exactly the same as teaching young Australians. They think they know everything until I ask them to write a joke.
They just speak funny.
Yeah, write a joke about penguins. You have 60 seconds, and then it's the longest 60 seconds of their life.
Yeah. But you've also you've taught at the Screen Academy in Scotland, Sydney University, Victorian College of the Arts, and Sydney Film School. They're very impressive. Those.
But look, it's like Bill Clinton. They're impressive on the outside. Then when you get into it, really,
it's just another skill.
Well, teaching for NYU sounds fantastic, but they're just young Americans, and they just want to know how to be funny. The real problem is, and the reason why I'm so busy with it, is that there aren't many people who teach comedy, because most screenwriters actually aren't. they actually are not screenwriters, and they're not capable of writing drama because they don't know the simple shit. And the simple shit is there are principles, there are hidden frameworks to comedy that connect everything from The Office TV show to the Hangover movies to Priscilla, Queen of the Desert. And they don't know this, which is why, certainly in Australia, and it's why Australian movies, well, you know, have you seen Netram? I mean, honestly, have you seen it? Mm. It's the story of the mass murderer, Port Arthur mass murderer, Martin Bryant. And the thing that's supposed to make it good is it stops before the massacre of 30 people, including children. And that's supposed to be a story. And that's supposed to be the best film of the year when it doesn't have the two things you need. You want to know what the two things are?
Go on.
Okay, the two things you need if you're going to write a drama are the two things, and you know this, Brenton, that you see in the symbol for drama, which is two masks. And one of them is crying, and that's, you know, Netram, and too many Australian films. But the other mask is laughing.
Yeah.
And this has been around for 2,400 years. And somehow it's eluded the Australian screenwriting community. And they figure that drama and comedy are two different things. But Aristotle knew, and anybody with half a brain knows, that there is no drama and there is no tragedy without a bit of comedy somewhere. So I just go and get in their faces, get in their grills. And, you know, I do stuff with AFTRS, the Australian Film, Television, Radio, Body Language, Morse Code, School. And it doesn't matter how many times I tell them you are missing something. I just get a very, you know, people thank me for coming in and giving my little rant, and then they go back to making their films of misery. So it's good for me because I'm always employed, because I only know 4 other teachers of comedy in Australia. The trouble is they've all got jobs making comedy, so they don't teach, whereas I don't sleep, so I make up for that time.
Yeah.
But that's got to be fixed. We'll fix up the disability employment thing first, but then the other thing is people have to, if they're going to write anything, engage with how do I find the humor here?
Yeah. And
I'll give you a tip. You just make a joke that hurts the bad guy.
Yeah. And but with your with all of your teaching and so forth, you know, again, you haven't let anything stop you from being able to do that, which is fantastic. I want to talk about some of your shows. I mean, you know, there was Doug Anthony Allstars, but there was also Doug Anthony Allstars Capital. So what's the difference between the two?
That's Capital.
I knew it was Capital.
I do apologise.
Oh, that's okay. It's a, you know, it was a pun on, you know, Karl Marx's book Das Kapital. Of course, nobody got it. Talk about shows that are ahead of their time. That was great fun to make. I mean, it was hell to make, but it was exciting to make. But it was a sci-fi sitcom that took place in a submarine in space. After history had come to an end, as foretold by Francis Fukuyama. You can imagine. You can just imagine.
So who actually came up with the concept of a submarine in space, you know?
Well, we were sitting backstage in London at the Donmar warehouse, I think, and it was Donmar, and we were painting our own backdrops. And word came through from Ted Robinson, producer, yes, I would be interested in making a sitcom. You got any ideas? And we'd been talking about Francis Fukuyama, who said that history was coming to a standstill, and only recently has come back into the media saying, obviously, I didn't predict 9/11 or Ukraine, so obviously history continues. And we were talking about that, and we just thought, as usual, we wanted to do sitcom our way. So we thought that using stop frame animation, puppetry, special effects, live special effects, lots of munitions, guns, explosions, God knows what, and also warping reality so that there was a forest on board and there was a witch in the forest, and it turned out it was Norman Bates's mother, played by Michael Petroni. So there were just all this grab bag of ideas. It didn't entirely make sense, but it was certainly funny, which I guess, but it wasn't like Seinfeld, Tim, Paul and Richard move into a group house, it wasn't anything like that. It was high concept. Young people today, I would not recommend that they watch Das Kapital, DAAS, Capital with a K, because they're too young and stupid to understand just how many risks we were when we were young and stupid were being taken.
Yeah. Now, there was another TV show that you were involved in, and that was Don't Forget Your Toothbrush.
I thought you were going to say the Today Show, which was my high point. But yeah, Don't Forget Your Toothbrush. Well, it's hard to explain again, isn't it? Was the idea, you don't forget your toothbrush because if you win the big prize, we will put you in a limo, take you to the airport, and you'll fly to an amazing destination.
And they were
in the meantime, we just rob things from people's houses.
But they were going on international flights. They were going on domestic. What was the
one or the other? So you would go to either Las Vegas, or Leongatha. Or you'd go to, I don't know, somewhere France or Fremantle. If you lost, you go to Fremantle, which is okay. Fremantle's beautiful, but it's not quite as good as France. We give you a ton of money and off you go.
Yeah.
But it was all mainly about, surprises and saying, wow, Cheryl, do you recognize this dog? And you'd be like, oh my God, that's my dog. Well, your dog is here. Like we'd kidnap Cheryl's dog. And it was just like, now I'm going to ask you questions, or, if the dog, goes for the biscuit on the left, you'll win $10,000. If the dog goes for the biscuit on the right, you only win 50 cents. But I played golf with food. We would steal people's cars and offer them money to blow the hell out of it in a live. It was all live, blow the hell out of it in a car park. You can't do TV segments that are about blowing shit up anymore, which is a great shame. And it was always fun. We'd steal their crappy Mazda and then fill it with so much dynamite that when it blew, it was seriously could be heard for miles.
It was actually a really good show. Do you remember it, Cheryl?
I think I do. I think it's one on.
It was a great show. I think it won Logie Award or several Logie Awards or something. I think
you don't have to do much to win a Logie, but yeah. It got the big Logie, but you don't have to do much. You just have to be vaguely entertaining and buy a lot of copies of TV Week.
I think that I think Greg Evans started it over in England or something, but I think his version of the show didn't work out so well. But you actually, how long did you do it for?
We did it for a year, and then we just had to go to sleep, and we'd spent all of Kerry Packer's money, and he found out. Because we spent money. I remember being at the first production meeting, and the producer wrote spend, spend, spend on the whiteboard and said, that's how we get out of trouble with this show. So it was, but yeah, it was great being, last of the big spenders. And it was, taking television and looking at it and seeing what it can really do. I think it's a shame that free-to-air television has it doesn't have enough money, but I think it's, the stakes are too high with new ideas, which is understandable. And so they just go for, I think, Channel 9's making McLeod's daughters, because, it's a safe bet. And if you're executive, why put your neck on the block? But it was it was a good time where you could take television, turn it upside down and say, what can we do? And can we do it live? Doing comedy live on TV is totally different to a spruced up, tidied, shot 5 times before a studio audience over 8 hours and then edited experience. When you've got comedians going live, you can see the terror in their eyes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. But, live entertainment is fantastic. I do a lot of live theatre. I was a magician for 25 years, and I was obviously doing live shows and, putting live comedy into that. And it's nerve-wracking, but it is exhilarating at the same time.
Particularly you just say, I did a bit of magic. You did tricks that you'd invented yourself. And there's so much that can go horribly, terribly, embarrassingly wrong. Mm-hmm. But that's why you do it. That's why the audience is tuning in. I don't know why they've forgotten this. I guess they don't want to upset whoever the hell it is.
I remember when I was a magician, one show I was doing, and I had a flash pot, which had gunpowder in it, and and it was an electric match trigger, and I'm leaning over it, and I'm still packing it behind my table, because the whole idea of this particular show was there was going to be this big puff of smoke, and all of a sudden I'm standing there. The organizer comes over to me, and he leans over to me and starts talking to me, and he bumps the electric match, goes off in my face. I've burnt my eyebrows. I've scorched my hair. I'm looking like that politician Doug Anthony with comb over and everything, and just my face is now black, is blacker than the black minstrels, and it was I had to jump straight into my show because I didn't have any more gunpowder to load into the thing. It was 5-minute early start to the show, but things can go wrong when you're doing live shows, but it's so much fun. It is. It's television with adrenaline.
Exactly. I don't know. It's there's an interesting thing going on usually, and you haven't asked me, and I think that's a testimony to your abilities and the fact that you are in show business. A lot of journalists will say, so what can you get away with now that you couldn't get away with before? And my answer is nothing's changed. You can get away with anything.
Yeah.
Audiences turn up to comedians. Like, there are over 500 acts at the Melbourne Comedy Festival right now, and hundreds of them will be there at Fringe World and all that stuff in Perth soon. They all turn up, and if you ask them what they're after, they want to see comedy that crosses the line, comedy that's too close to the edge. They want to see the risky stuff. They want to see that because that's the essence of comedy. There is no safe comedy. Chris Rock refuses to play to university students because he said that they're just incapable of relaxing. But if you look at offensive comedy, say on people like Anthony Jeselnik on his Netflix special, there's a full audience of 3,000 people there and everybody's laughing. So I think that the idea that comedians should bite their tongues or not cover certain topics is bullshit, because they are, and nobody's walking out.
Yeah.
Jimmy Carr's special, his dark material, is not full or doesn't show audience members, making their ways to the exits. Again, he's got 4,000 people all laughing like drains. So it's important to know the difference is, the important thing is, if you are writing, say, stand-up comedy, is to be sure of what is your intention for a joke. Like, what are you really saying?
Yeah.
And if you are really saying something that, makes sense, that you're happy to stand in a bar or go on, this radio show and defend, if you clearly haven't designed it just to hurt people's feelings, then it's perfectly fine. So it's about intent and impact.
Yeah.
At the moment, everybody's worried about the impact. This makes me feel uncomfortable. Well, then fuck off is my response. Sorry, I used the word off. It makes you feel uncomfortable. This is comedy. What are you doing here? It's like getting into a shark tank and saying, oh, I didn't know they would bite. Comedy is about, a limited number of people on stage taking huge risks, bounding past conventions, causing trouble, asking big questions about life, not just telling bullshit, making stupid observations about, going to Aldi when I was stoned. People like Kirsty Webeck, like Sam Simmons, who go on stage and they're pushing society.
Yeah.
And if you don't want that to happen, then just go around the corner to a local drama. So my next show I'm writing at the moment, the working title is Offensive. It's called Offensive, because I figure that'll get people in. They know that that's what I write.
Well, I mean, you just have to look at shows like Jackass and things like that have been on TV, and they've had, 3 movies and been extremely popular.
Yes, young men behaving stupidly. It's, why do people like Ricky Gervais opening to the Golden Globes? It's not because it makes everybody feel uncomfortable. Those actors out there are crapping themselves when he walks on stage.
Yeah.
And it's what we want. And Ricky's trick, I read an interview where he said, really, when I walk on stage for the Golden Globes, I just want my jokes to represent what people are saying at home watching the TV.
Yeah. Well,
when you think about it that way, like, he's not saying anything that we wouldn't all say if we had the time.
Yeah.
Comedy is far more free than the media expect. If you're writing comedy and you want it to be safe, then get out of the way, because you will be run over. And comedy demands, as George Carlin said, a comedian must find out where the line is and cross it immediately.
Yeah. Well, you've just mentioned Ricky Gervais and, celebrity roast comedy. And, of course, that's a very big topic at the moment in, news, social media, everything, is what happened at the Oscars just the other day. Now, I mean, I understand celebrity roast comedy. It's been around for, since the days of Dean Martin. He used to have Dean Martin celebrity roast. And they used to go above and beyond that. They used to go further than saying, Jada, I love you. Can't wait to see G.I. Jane 2. Okay. She's got a condition I can't pronounce.
Alopecia.
Thank you. now you know why I've got Cheryl here.
But it sounds like a drag queen. Good alopecia. Yeah, alopecia. But it should be said that Chris Rock didn't know this. All he knew was that
she was bald.
Jada was turning up and she'd shaven her hair, which is, quite fashionable. And so he just made a comment about that, about G.I. Jane, which is a great movie in which Demi Moore looked beautiful with shaven hair. It's just that, Will Smith, dare I say it, a Scientologist, laughed, then realized, oh, hang on, there's been an impact.
Yeah.
And then thought he would get up and fix that problem. But
because he laughed at it, and then his wife gave him the stink eye, and he got. I mean, Will Smith was way out of line, and we're going to be talking about that. Cheryl and I are going to be talking about that after our interview, because there's a lot I want to talk about that. This is what my show's about, and I am not going to be holding prisoners. It's. Yeah, his attitude was completely disgusting, and
Yeah, I mean, what kind of guy goes and slaps another guy for something he said? Even Jim Carrey said they're just words. You can shout, you can argue, you can say, we'll have a shouting argument after the show.
Yeah.
But there's no point in getting up and slapping comedians.
No.
You can't knock sense into a comedian. They'll always come back. Funnily enough, Chris Rock's world tour is selling like hotcakes, and you'll be able to buy tickets. So make sure you go and buy a ticket and support the guy who got slapped for making really quite a benign joke. They're calling alopecia a disability, which as a person with a disability, I find offensive on her behalf and mine.
Yeah. It's a condition. It's not a disability because it doesn't stop her from doing anything. She still has full function of her body. It's just Yes, there goes the Shirley Temple haircut. Well, I got rid of mine days ago. Now you've done shows though where you've made fun of your own situation. Carry a big stick, for example. And how do you find your audiences? Do they respect the situation, or do they? Because I have heard of people saying there was a comedian on America's Got Talent where he had a really bad stutter. He got hit with a football or something, a baseball or something, and it caused him to have a really bad. He was a great comedian. I don't know if you ever saw it. He was a great comedian. And he said that people would say to him, "Oh, you shouldn't be making fun of people with this situation, this condition." And Steady Eddie, who I haven't heard of from Steady Eddie for a long time. I don't know what his situation is at the moment.
He's still going.
But he used to, of course, he would do his comedy on his condition as well. But people would say you shouldn't do that. What's your opinion? Do you think you should or you shouldn't?
Oh, if you've got something, if you are something, if your identity is something or other, then if you're a comedian, it's your job to make fun of it, to make light of it, to provide perspective on things that scare other people.
Yeah.
I would guarantee that people complaining about a comedian making jokes about a certain condition don't actually have that condition. They may have a friend who has it, or they may just be snooty busybodies who should, find something else to do.
Yeah.
The fact is, but again, it's like, what is your intent with a joke? What are you trying to say with it? It's made easier if you actually have the condition. But even then, I mean, Doug Anthony Allstars used to make jokes. There was a thing at the end of the show. I think it was Paul who would say, "No, we've all had fun and games here tonight, but don't forget there are conditions out there that might affect you." multiple sclerosis. Very terrible. So just watch out for that one.
Yeah.
If your intent is justifiable, then say whatever you like. There is no topic that can't be covered, so long as you cover it in the right way.
Yeah. Yeah.
You could even, talk about Ukraine right now. It probably deserves a bit of time to pass because time helps. But in 10 years, will people still be uppity about Ukraine? At the moment, it's a hot topic. And there are only comedians like Scottish guy Jerry Sadowitz who can get away with it because that's what people buy their tickets for.
Yeah.
But, if drama can talk about it, then comedy can talk about it. You just find the way to talk about it. I talk about, what it's like to be tall, dark, handsome, and wearing a nappy. It's not as bad as you think because it means you stay on the dance floor until you pick someone up, as opposed to other people who have to keep going off to the loo and rushing back and, oh, no, she's gone. Or, no, that handsome guy's gone. You wear a nappy, you're there all night. And it's like, and we laugh, but it's, looking at wearing a nappy and, the intent is it's not as bad as you think. There are plenty of people, plenty of women who have to wear poise, it's called. I mean, really, poise, they call it, but it's for light bladder leakage, which, even young women can experience. So what? You make fun of it. You make light of it. So add a different perspective, like actually it's better to wear poise. Life is easier and more enjoyable and you can hang around on the dance floor way longer than those other cows. It's what are you going to say with it? I've never had anybody complain. I wish they would, although I did have people occasionally walk out, but I think though it's just, it's always after a joke where you go, was that the joke? Geez, what's wrong with that one? But sometimes they just get bored and leave.
So what's next for you? What besides your teaching, what's coming up? What are you doing? What can we promote for you? Tell me what you're doing so we can promote.
All right. I will be coming to Perth, I would say.
Fantastic. So we can finally have that beer we talked about some time ago.
Yeah. It will have gone flat. Maybe we'll have to buy a new one. But I'll be bringing Offensive, the new show, to Perth. I imagine to next year's Fringe World. Is that what it's called?
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, the Fringe World. How Offensive. I've played it twice. But also I've got to finish this How to Write Stand-Up book. And it's killing me because it's like trying to explain acrobatics without mentioning the word acrobat. It's difficult, but and it's got to be simple. So simple, it's got to be thin, because otherwise, what young person's going to read a big, thick book? And to make it thin, it's got to be boiled down. So I've got to do that. And Mark Gracie and I are working on our next 2 movies, and I think that's enough. But in the meantime, what you could promote, Cheryl and Brenton, is people can read my political satire every week in, it's called thenewdaily.com.au, which is a free newspaper. Oh, okay. Wendy Harmer's calling me. How about that? How cool.
Say hello to Wendy.
I will. It's a free newspaper. I do every Saturday a political satire where I boil down the week's events. Fake news you can trust. The Ferguson Report, it's called.
Okay.
So, get onto that one, folks, because it's a really good newspaper. It's not right-wing, it's not left-wing. In fact, it has no wings at all.
So what's the link again? What's it called?
It's called thenewdaily.com.au.
The New Daily, Daily?
Yeah, and it's got all sorts of great writers. I mean, Michelle Grattan writes for it, Michael Pascoe regularly, all the big opinion column writers. And, yeah, once a week, an idiot like me going, hey, the Prime Minister, blah, blah.
Yeah. And you've got, and you said about Offensive coming out next year. I hope it's offensive. I will do my very best. Well, I hope so too. If it's not, I'll be very disappointed. You realise that?
I know. If you walk out unoffended, it's like, well, there we go. I'll tweet about that. I went to see Offensive and I wasn't at all.
Now, how can someone get your books? How can we get your Cheeky Monkey books and all the rest of it?
If you go to Booktopia, you'll be able to find my autobiography, which is called Carry a Big Stick, and also the Cheeky Monkey writing narrative comedy.
Yeah,
is also on Booktopia. But hurry now. Grab the. If you want to read my funny opinions about getting MS, having MS, and rolling past MS in such an inspiring fashion, then Carry a Big Stick is for you. Or if you know someone who's in a tight corner and needs a bit of a laugh, but also, a bit of inspiration, then Carry a Big Stick is designed to do that. Otherwise, learn how to write comedy and save yourself a lot of time in a real job.
Fantastic. Tim, I know you've got Wendy Harmer is trying to contact you. So
I know she never does.
Well, maybe she wants you to open her show or something. But Tim, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show today, and we will chat some more on Facebook, and we'll catch up. We were supposed to catch up once before when you came out to Perth, and unfortunately I was not able to be there for some reason. But I would love to when you do come to Perth. Let's get you physically on the show. Let's sit down here. We'll do and we'll get photos together, and I'll make $1 million by selling them.
$1 million. That's pesos, but it adds up.
But no, we will definitely catch up when you come over to Perth. Okay.
You bet, Brenton. Thanks for having me, and thank you, Cheryl. You've done a great job, Cheryl.
Look, it's been an absolute pleasure, Tim, and again, folks, go to thenewdaily.com.au and read his blogs. Go to Booktopia, buy Tim's books, and catch up with Tim next year when he comes out to the Fringe Festival to do Offensive. Tim, again, thank you so much. Tell Wendy I need to get her on the show.
Okay. Well, good luck to both of you. Go get them. Don't take maybe for an answer. IPL Radio rocks. I will tell all my friends to get on it.
Thank you so much, Tim.
Thank you.
And that was Tim Ferguson. All right. We're going to play that song that we started at the start of the show, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about the Oscars. All right. We'll be back very shortly.